Hello everyone, welcome to Power of 21 with ClearTex. I am CSLB Punshi, Indirect Tax Expert at ClearTex. And today we are going to discuss on interest, late fees and penalties under GST. And also we'll understand about various offenses which are covered under GST. Along with that, we'll also touch on the prosecution and the confiscation of goods. So we'll understand about all of this. So we'll just start our session. So before starting our session, I also want to say a big congratulations. So I want to say big congratulations to Mr. Anil Chakravarti for becoming our ClearTex champion. So congratulations, Anil Chakravarti. So now we'll just start on our session. We just talk about the first topic for today's session is interest under GST. So if we just talk about interest, obviously there are lot many sections which deals with the provision of interest. So if we think of what are the section, here is the list of different section which talks about interest, where we are actually liable to pay interest. So some of the cases are interest on delay payment of tax or undue or excess claim of ITC or undue or excess reduction in the output tax liability, or there is an interest on the delayed refund where interest needs to be paid by the department, or there are also cases where you have to pay the interest where the taxes was collected but the same was not paid, or there could be a cases where there was a determination of taxes not paid or short paid, or it's erroneously refunded, or you have claimed the ITC wrongly. It could be due to so both of the cases are covered over here. There are also certain cases where you have to deduct the TDS but you have not, or there could be cases where you have deducted the TDS but you have not deposited that to the government. Similarly, there are cases where you are liable to collect the TCS and you have not collected and you have not even paid to the government. So all of these cases are covered where you are liable to pay the interest. So now we'll actually understand all of this section one by one, and we'll also understand what is the interest rate on such cases. So if we just go with our first section, which talks about section 50 subsection 1, which is on interest on delay payment of tax. If we just look into the section, it starts with every person who is liable to pay tax but fails to pay the tax or any part thereof shall for the period for which the tax or any part thereof remains unpaid pay on his own interest at such rate not exceeding 18%. So first word which they have used over here is every person. So it means if the person is not registered or was liable to be registered, in that case, also the interest will be levied. So it is not a compulsion for the person or the authority to levy the interest if that person is not even registered in the GST. So the person can also, or the authority can also ask to pay the interest if you are not registered under GST. So which means it's talking about every person, which is again important thing. The second important part, it talks about they are liable to pay tax but fails to pay. That person was liable to pay the taxes to the government, but that person has not paid the taxes. In that case, interest will be levied, and the interest rate over here is 18% per annum. So that is interest rate. But yeah, there are certain cases because of COVID-19, government has given the relaxation on the interest too. We'll understand that what is that relaxation which has been given by the government because of COVID-19. So mainly there are three return period for which they have given the relaxation. There is a due date when you have to file the return, and if you don't file the return till that due date, in that particular case there would be a normal interest rate, but there is 15 days relaxation. We'll understand about that in bit. But for now, if you just think about section 51, it talks about where you were liable to pay the taxes and you have failed to pay the taxes to the government, then you have to pay the interest at the rate of 15%. Sorry, you have to pay the interest at the rate of 18%. Now the second section is section 50 subsection 3, which talks about undue or excess claim of ITC under subsection 10 of section 42. Or it talks about undue or excess reduction in the output tax liability under subsection 10 of section 43. In that case, again, you have to pay the taxes, and here the tax rate is 24%. But if you just see this definition, they have also used our taxable person. So if you just see the 51, there they have used the person, any person. But here they are using a taxable person, which means they are talking about a person who is either registered under GST or is liable to register. They are not talking about every person. So if the person is registered under GST or liable to get registered under GST and that person has undue excess claim the ITC or undue excess reduction in the output tax liability, in that particular case, this person has to pay the interest at the rate of 1. So this talks about the claim, the wrong claiming of the ITC, or if that person was liable to reduce his liability, but he has, he was not liable to reduce his liability, but he has reduced his liability. In that case, the interest needs to be paid. So if we just take a few examples, like where the person has to actually reduce his liability, so the cases could be the person have issued the credit note and has actually reduced the liability, but the other person has not even reversed the ITC. So this person cannot even reduce his liability because there is a condition that the other person should also reduce or reverse their ITC. Then only this person can actually reduce his liability. But this person has reduced the liability. Then again, in this case, you have to pay the interest at the rate of 24%. The other example is you have claimed the ITC, but your supplier has not even uploaded the invoices. In that case, also you have to pay the interest. But again, there are different opinion over here, because if we again go back what section says, it talks about subsection 10 of section 42, which was mainly in relation to GST 1, GST 2, and GST 3, which was there earlier in the July 2017, but again that was removed. So that is mainly in respect of that, where they say if the recipient asks the supplier to upload the invoice and the supplier don't upload the invoice, then this recipient has to reverse his ITC. So it was mainly talking about that point and not the other thing. But we can take a general opinion over here, because this section does not even exist now, especially that data does not exist now. So it actually depends from person to person whether you want to pay the interest at the rate of 24%, or you want to go with the normal provision which talks about the interest rate at 10%. Now, if we just talk about certain relaxation which has been given on the interest part due to COVID-19. So here, if we just look into the due dates, because in 3B only we pay the taxes to the government, so that is through 3B we actually pay the taxes to the government. So here this says if your turnover is greater than 5 crore, and obviously if we know the due date for Feb 2020, the original due date is 20th March, which remains the same. The due date will remain the same, it's like 20th March. But this says, so they have given the relaxation of 15 days first. So if your turnover is more than 5 crore, they have given the relaxation of 15 days from the normal due date. So if we just talk about Feb 20, if the due date is 20th March, so if we just take 15 days from there, it becomes 4th April. So till 4th April, you don't have to pay any interest or the late fees to the government. Then they say there would be reduced rate, because right now we have discussed the rate is interest rate is 18%. So they have given you the reduced rate. So they say from 4th April you have to pay the interest, but you have to pay the interest at the reduced rate, which is 9%. Right? So that is how they have done. So again, when we're saying 9%, that is again with some limit. So if you file the return till 24th June, the interest rate will be 9%. But after that, still if you don't pay the interest to the government, in that case, the interest will be levied at the normal rate, which is 18%. Same case applies for March and April too. Again, if you look into the March, the due date is, let's say, 20th April. They have given you 15 days relaxation. They ask you if you pay the interest, you file the return by 5th May, there will be no interest and the late fees. But if you don't file the return by 5th May, they have given the extended time of 24th June. Till 24th June, if you file, you will get the relaxed interest rate, which is 9%. But if you don't even file till 24th June, then the normal interest will be levied, which is at the rate of 18%. Similarly, applies for April too. And April also, if you just see, the same case apply for that month too. Now there is another person whose turnover is between 1.5 crore, but we can say within 1.5 crore and 5 crore. In that case, that relaxation of 9% is not given, but they have extended the waiver of the, you can say waiver or the reduced amount. They don't even have to pay the interest and the late fees. So if we understand with the help of example, because 3B, let's say for the return period Feb month, the due date is 20th March. The revised due date will remain the same, 20th March. They have given a deadline. If you file the return till 29th June, In that particular case, you don't even have to pay any interest or the late fees. But if you don't file the, you can say the 3B by the 29th June, in that case, you have to pay the interest and the late fees at the normal rate, which is your 18%. Similarly, it applies for March and April too. There is a separate due dates for that too. So this is about if your turnover is within 1.5 crore and 5 crore. Then there is a cases where your turnover is less than 1.5 crore. Here, if we understand the same as they have done for like the turnover whose turnover is within 1.5 crore to 5 crore, the same is applicable if your turnover is less than 1.5 crore. We'll understand this with the help of example. Let's say if we talk about Feb month, your due date was 20th March. So if you file the return till 30th June, in that case, you don't have to pay any interest on the late fees. But if you file after 30th June, then you have to pay the interest at the normal rate, which would be your 18% per annum. Similarly, if you look into the other return period, it is applicable. Now, one important thing, when we are saying due date here, we have specified the due date, let's say 30th June, 3rd July, 6th July. So this actually is dependent on some states too. For some states, these due dates are a little different. So you can refer to the actual notification for what is the actual due dates for different states. So this is the relaxation in the interest which has been given by the government. Now, if we'll understand, because we have understand main two section, which is section 50 subsection 1 and section 50 subsection 3, which was talking about interest and which is talking about interest rate, which is mainly 18% or 24%. We also understood about the relaxation given in the interest. Now we'll understand like, what are the cases where you have to pay the interest at the rate of 18%. Here we understood if you are liable to pay any tax to the government and if you have not paid, then you have to pay the tax rate at the interest at the rate of 18%. Second case where you have wrongly availed the ITC and you are liable to reverse that. Or maybe you have reduced your liability, but you should not reduce that liability. In that case, you have to pay the interest at the rate of 24% per annum. The other question is whether you have to pay interest on the gross amount, which means what is your actual liability without adjusting that ITC amount, or you have to pay the interest on the net amount. So for this already the clarification has been come up with the government where they say you have to pay the interest on the net amount and not on the gross amount, and this is applicable from your 1st July 2017. So that is a retrospective amendment which was done, and it clearly clarifies that you have to pay the interest on net and not on the gross, which means after adjusting ITC, whatever the balance you have, only on that amount you have to pay the interest and not on the entire amount. Other question could be whether interest to be paid on ITC wrongly availed or it should be paid on ITC wrongly utilized. So what does this mean? What does wrongly availed and wrongly utilized means? So just think of a case in one particular month you have no sales at all. You just have made certain purchases. Since you have made the purchases, in your GSTR 3B, you have shown that amount. Since you have shown that amount, you have also filed the return, but you are not liable to pay anything, so you have not utilized it against any liability. But it went and shown in your electronic credit ledger. Now, the second case could be where you had certain liability, you have shown the ITC, you have adjusted that ITC against that liability and make the balance payment to the government, which means you have now utilized certain ITC against paying the liability. So that second case is you have utilized that amount. So in this case, when we talk about the interest, and now if we talk about that ITC which you have utilized, let's say you are not even eligible to utilize that. Maybe you have not even received the goods or services, or it was not in your 2A, or there could be any other reason. You have not fulfilled certain condition of claiming the ITC. So in that particular case, here whenever we talk about interest, it should be on the utilized part and not the availed part. Okay. Now, other is whether there is any interest on interest. So no, there would be no interest on interest. Other is whether the interest to be paid through electronic credit ledger. Can we pay the interest through electronic credit ledger? Answer is no. We cannot make the payment of the interest through the electronic credit ledger. That needs to be paid by paying a separate challan, again in the section interest. Now the other section is which talks about section number 51, which talks about tax deducted at source. We know as per section number 51, we are liable to deduct the taxes. Who are liable? The PSUs, and they have notified the list that these are the person who is liable to deduct the taxes. And this is for your reference purpose, like who all are liable. So they say that the tax needs to be deducted at the rate of 1% from the payment made or credited to the supplier of the taxable goods or services or both. So one thing is they have to deduct the taxes if they have purchased. Obviously, this is the PSU, right? PSU, what they are going to do, they are going to get the goods or the services from the other person, the normal person. So this PSU is liable to deduct the taxes, which is TDS. And when they are liable to deduct the taxes, and obviously if the value of this is more than 2,50,000, then only they are liable to deduct the taxes. And if they were liable and they have not deducted the taxes, then again they have to pay the interest. Or maybe if they would have deducted but not paid to the government, again in that case they are liable to pay the interest. And now question comes in, what is the interest rate for this? So they say the interest, whatever is specified in section 51, and if we talk about 51, the interest rate was 18%. So here they are liable to pay interest at the rate of 18% if they have deducted some amount and not paid to the government, or maybe they have not even deducted. So in both the cases, they are required to pay the interest at the rate of 18%. The other section, section 52, which talks about tax collected at source. When I'm saying tax collected at source, which means there is a supplier who is supplying the goods to an e-commerce operator, and this e-commerce operator is liable to collect some taxes from the person who is a supplier. So while he is making the payment, he will make sure that he is collecting some taxes. So again, this person has to get that money and pay that to the government. So if you just look into section 52, it talks about every e-commerce operator is required to collect 1% tax of the supplies made where the consideration is collected by the e-commerce operator. So usually what happens is a customer who places an order on the e-commerce operator. Once he places an order on the e-commerce operator, this person will pass this order to the supplier, and then the supplier will make the payment to this this supplier will make the services or the good to this particular person who is a customer. But customer who he is going to make this payment to the e-commerce operator. So this e-commerce operator, after deducting his commission, will make the balance payment to this supplier. So while he's deducting the commission, he also has to deduct that amount which is called as TCS. So he has to collect that 1% while he's making payment to this person. So if you just see where the consideration, but remember one thing here, the consideration has been collected by the e-commerce operator, because there could be certain cases where the consideration is directly collected by the supplier from this person. So if that's the case, in that case, this e-commerce operator is not liable for collecting the taxes. Right. So after collecting within like next like from after the end of the month by 10th, he has to pay that amount to the government, and he also has to file the return, which is GSTR 8. So if this is not done, let's say this person has not collected the taxes and deposited to the government, then again interest will be levied. And we talk about what is the interest rate. Again, as per section 50 subsection 1, which talks about 18% per annum. So the same interest will be applicable in this case also. Now the other part is interest on refund. So if we talk about interest on refund, obviously this will be given by the department, because refund we would be eligible to claim. So here this says if the refund is due upon the order of the proper officer and the refund is not granted within 60 days of application. They have given some time, like within 60 days of the application they are liable to pay you the refund. But if it is not done, then they have to pay you the interest at the rate of 6% per annum after the 60 days till paid. So they have given some bifurcation, also you can say some time to the department to pay the you can say pay the refund, and if that is not paid, then they have to pay the interest. But again, that interest will be paid only after 60 days, not like from the start. So it's not from the application date, it's after 60 days till it's actually paid. Now the other part, so here the interest rate is 6%, but if the refund is due on upon the order of education authority or maybe court or something, in that particular case, if the refund is not granted within 60 days of the application file, then here the interest again needs to be paid, but here is higher rate, which is 9%, and that again needs to be paid after 60 days till it is actually paid. So the date of the interest which starts would be after 60 days of filing the application. Right. So this is about the interest you will get or the refund. Now again there are such section 73 and 74. 73 talks about the determination of taxes not paid or short paid or honestly refunded or ITC is wrongly availed or utilized for reason other than fraud or any willful misstatement or suppression of fact. So 73 talks about interest in this section, and then there is a section number 74 which talks about determination of tax not paid or short paid or erroneously refunded or input tax credit wrongly availed or utilized for reason of fraud or any willful misstatement or suppression of fact. So here, if we just talk about again the interest will be again, which is whatever was given in section number. So you can say the person who is referred in subsection number 1 shall, in addition of paying the amount referred to in subsection 1 or subsection 3, shall be liable to pay interest at the rate under section number 15 from the date such amount was collected by him to the date such amount is paid by him to the government. So here, whenever we are talking about it, so the thing is that you would have collected the amount from the person, the customer, but you have not deposited. So the interest will be levied from what particular time? So they say from the time you have actually collected that amount till the time you have actually paid to the government, the interest will be levied. Now there is another thing. It talks about, which is section number 77 subsection 2, which talks about, let's say instead of paying the IGST you have paid CGST or SGST to the government or vice versa. So in this particular case, what you have to actually do, you have to again make the payment, the correct type of the payment to the government, and take the refund of whatever you have wrongly paid. Now question comes in whether interest needs to be paid on this. So here the comment says there is no levy of interest on such transaction. Then there is section 80, which gives you little relief. So they say, like, because sometimes what happens, I have to pay taxes to the government, I also have to pay interest to the government, but right now I don't have a cash. My working capital is blocked. I'm not actually getting the money from the customer, but I was liable to pay some amount to the government. So in this case, I can also do one thing. I can actually file an application to the commissioner, and I can ask the commissioner if they can extend this time, or they can either extend the time or I can give that money in installment. So I can ask this, and if that permits, in that particular case, obviously that installment has to be within 24, within 24 months. It cannot be more than that. But along with that, I also have to pay the interest, which is under section number 50. Now there is another proviso to section 16, if you remember, which talks about that you have to pay the amount to your supplier within 180 days, and if you don't pay, you have to reverse your ITC, and along with reversing the ITC, you also have to pay the interest. So this is a section which talks about it, where you have to pay the interest along with reversing the ITC. Now we'll understand. So we have actually understood about different sections which is related to the interest, but let's understand the applicability of this interest through some examples, like what would be the interest on these cases and whether there is an interest on these cases or not. So first is, let's say if there is a registered person who has claimed the ITC of 1 lakh instead of 10,000, and upon realizing the mistake, later on he reversed the credit. So whether the interest needs to be paid in this case? Yes, you have to pay interest because you have wrongly claimed the ITC. Now question comes is, what is the interest rate? Whether it will be 18% or it will be 24%. So because it's a wrong claiming of ITC, and if we talk about wrong claiming, it's covered under section 50 subsection 3, which means the interest rate over here would be 24%. Now going towards the next example, let's say there is a registered person who claims ITC which is appearing in H2A, knowing well that it does not belong to him, right? And later on, upon the auditor observation, he reversed the credit. In that case, whether the interest will be levied? Yes, because he has wrongly claimed the ITC. He has not even fulfilled the condition of claiming the ITC, so interest will be levied. What rate? Will it be 18% or it will be 24%? It will be 24% because again this transaction is covered under section 50 subsection 3. Now, other cases, there is a registered person who has treated an interstate supply as an interstate supply, and on realization, he corrects the mistake as per section number 77. So here, whether the interest will be levied, so as we discussed, no interest will be levied in such case. So up till now, we have understood about the all provisions of interest. We know when we talk about interest, the interest either needs to be paid at 18% or the same needs to be paid at 24%. We also understood about the relaxation which has been given by the government on levy of the interest due to this COVID-19. Now we'll go towards late fees under GST. So if we talk about the late fees under GST, section 47 actually defines about the levy of the late fees. So if we talk about what is the late fees as per the section, it says the late fees is 200 rupees per day, because in the act it is defined 100 per day, and which is again under the act. So if we just say CGST again is 100 per day, and if we talk about SGST is again 100 rupees per day. So that is how it's defined. So in totality, if we just talk about what is the net conclusion for me, how much interest I have to pay if I don't file my return on time, then your then your late fees is 200 rupees per day. But again, this late fees has been reduced by the notification. We know what is the late fees, but if we talk about in general, if we talk about act and the notification, what is the normal late fees is 200 rupees per day subject to 10,000. The maximum late fees which will be levied on you is 10,000 rupees. Now, if we talk about what is the reduced late fees, so if you have nil liability, you don't have any liability at all, maybe you have to file the nil return, or maybe you just have the ITC right now in for one particular month, you don't have any output tax liability. In that case, your late fees would be 20 rupees per day. But in case you have liability, you have to pay certain liability to the government. In that particular case, your late fee will be 50 rupees per day. So this is 20 rupees in nil return, and wherever you have a liability, the late fees is your you can say 50 rupees per day. But obviously subject to maximum 10,000, you don't have to pay the late fees more than 10,000. We understood about now, because we understood about section number 51, which talks about tax deducted at source, where PSUs and all has to actually deduct the taxes while they're making the payment to their suppliers. So they says as per the section, it's like TDS to be deposited within 10 days from the end of the month. And also the deductor has to issue the certificate to the deductee. In case deductor fails to issue within 5 days of payment of the tax, then there is a late fees of 100 rupees per day, which is maximum 5,000. This is again under one act. If we just consolidated it, so it's 200 rupees per day and the maximum is 10,000. So this is all about late fees, and if we just summarize what was under late fees, either it is 50 rupees per day or it is 20 rupees per day. So that was late fees. Now we'll go towards offenses under GST, which is again important. The reason is because if you have certain offenses, you are either liable for a penalty, and if you talk about penalty, it could be in terms of, so if you talk about the offenses, obviously there will be certain punishment. And the punishment can be in the forms of paying the penalty. It could be in the form of confiscation of your goods. It could be like the government saying, okay, you have to now go to the jail. So anything would be done. So that is about the, so that's the reason it's very important for us to understand what are the offenses which is covered under GST. So if we talk about the offenses, that can be done by either by the registered taxable person, which means he is directly involved in an offense, or it could be indirectly, there could be a third person who is indirectly involved in an offense. So it could also be done by the third person. So first we'll understand the offenses which has been done by the registered taxable person, which means he is directly involved in offense. So looking into the list, there are actually 21 offenses. And obviously it's not easy for us to remember all that offenses. So that's the reason we have just categorized that into 5 parts so that we can easily know what are the offenses or also remember the offenses. So we'll just, if you look into the list, we have like lot many offenses. We have just divided this into 5 main parts so that we remember that offenses. First one is related to invoices. Second one is related to information. Third one is related to tax amount. Under tax amount, we'll also look into what is directly related to the tax amount and what is indirectly related to the tax amount. Then there is fourth one, which is related to supply or transportation of goods, and which is not able to cover under this particular 4 categories. We have kept under the others. So these are the main 5 categories where we have defined this total 21 offenses which is covered under GST. We'll now go into each of this category so that we know what are the offenses and because of that offenses are we liable for the penalty or maybe prosecution or maybe confiscation. So we'll understand all of this. So if we just talk about the first one, which is related to the invoices, there it says if you are supplying without an invoice or with a false invoice, or you are issuing the invoice without the supply, or you are issuing the invoice using the GSTN of the another person. This normally thing, what happens whenever what I am doing, I am a normal person, I am a registered businessman. Now if I am a businessman, what I will do, I have to also issue an invoice to my customer, right? But and obviously when I have to issue the invoice to the customer, I also have to deliver the goods or services. What I did, I like okay यार भाई मुझे तो टैक्स नहीं देना, just take this invoice with you. And ये सिर्फ अवेजन के लिए किया गया था, मैंने उसको दे दिया इनवॉइस, वो ATC क्लेम कर लेगा, बट मैंने उसको गुड्स तो सप्लाई नहीं करे, which means it's wrong, right? There is some fraud which is happening. I'm just issuing the fake invoices and I'm not even delivering the goods. So that is one of the offenses. Or there could also be second case. You would have seen practically also. Sometimes what happens? I have actually given the goods to that customer, but I'm not issuing the invoice. Why? Because if I issue the invoice, obviously I'm also going to declare that to the government and I will file it and I have to pay the taxes to the government. So most of the time, just to avoid the taxes or to make some fraud, I usually don't even give that invoice. Or maybe I would have given the invoice, but I have not mentioned my GSTN. I have given some random GSTN in that invoice because that person was forcing me to put a GSTN that your GSTN was not there. So I have put some random GSTN. So all such cases are offenses under GST. So in all such cases, you are liable for the penalty or maybe prosecution or maybe confiscation of goods. We'll understand in what cases you have to pay penalty, in what cases is a prosecution, and one cases there could also be confiscation of goods. So these are the three cases. If you are supplying without the invoice or maybe with the wrong invoice or the false invoice, or you are issuing an invoice without the supply, or you are issuing the invoice using the GSTN of the other person. Now the second important category where we have just divided, that is based on information. We know under GST this information is also important because through this only the government would know that you are a registered person, and on the basis of this only they will be able to catch you if you are doing something wrong. So here what government says, if you submit the false information while registering, or you file the fake return or fake financial report, or it does not provide or provides the false information during the proceeding, or it does not maintain the required books of account. So these are the four category which is covered under the offenses which is related to information. So if we just think again, what does this mean? See, usually what happens, you have to get registered under GST. While you are registering on the government portal, you give so many information to the government. You give the information regarding the place of your business, where you are actually running the business. And you also have to give the additional place of the business if you are running the business from 2 or 3 places. Let's say you have wrongly reported, maybe you are not even running the business from that place and you have written over that particular place of business in your while you are actually registering, or maybe the HSN, you are not even dealing with that goods or services, the nature of business is not that, but you have written that information in your registration while you are registering, then that's an offense, which means you are doing some fraudulent work over here and government feel you are doing something wrong, you are not giving correct information to the government, so that becomes an offense. Or the second case could be, I am filing the return, and while I was filing the return, what I'm doing, I have to write some, I actually show some B2B invoices, I've written some wrong GST number, and that was like, I know this wrong, still I have written that thing. Or maybe there were certain sales I'm not even showing their sales, or maybe there was certain tax amount I was showing wrong. So which means I am filing the fake return, or I am giving the fake financial record to the government. In that case, that's also an offense. The other could be, there was a case, and obviously the authority was asking for me, from me some information. They were asking for some records and all, and I'm not giving that record, or I'm giving the wrong record to the person, the authority. In that case, that is also an offense. Or the other cause could be, because as per, if we just go with an act, there is a rule and it clearly mentions that what are the books of accounts you have to maintain, what are the documents you should keep with you while you are maintaining your books or accounts. So in that case, if you're not maintaining your books of account, in that case also that is covered under offense. So these are the four things which is related to information and is covered under offenses. Now we'll move towards our third category, which is related to tax amount. And we talk about tax amount. Is that it could be the main tax liability related amount, or it could be other tax amount related. Other could be like TDS, TCS, or we can say the ISD who is distributing the ITC part. So that is the other tax related amount, and there is a main tax liability, which means I would have collected some amount, but I have not deposited that to the government. So we'll understand what are the main tax liability related amount. So if you just collect some GST from your customer and you don't pay that amount to the government within 3 months, then this is an offense. Or maybe if you have extra collected from your customer and you're not making the payment to the government within 3 months, that is also an offense. Or there could also be case where you have obtained the refund from the government by fraud. You are not liable for a refund, but you have shown wrong ITC or wrong invoices. In that particular case also, that's a you can say it's an offense. Or there could be the other case where you have claimed or utilized your ITC without receiving the goods or services. You know that one of the conditions for claiming the ITC is that you should also receive the goods or services. So if you are claiming the ITC without receiving the goods or services, that is also covered under offenses. So these are the four categories which is under the tax amount and which is related to the main tax liability. If we talk about other one, so other three are related to TDS. So if you does not deduct or short deduct the TDS, as per section number 51, the PSUs and others has to actually deduct the taxes while they're making the payment to their suppliers. So if you are not deducting or you're short deducting the TDS, again it's an offense. Similarly, we have read about section 52, which was talking about the e-commerce operator. So if he does not collect or short collect the TCS, then again this is an offense. Similarly, there is an ISD who actually files GST 6. So if ISD has distributed the credit in violation of the rule, then that is also an offense. So this was about our third category, which was related to tax amount. Now we'll move towards our fourth category, which is related to transportation of the goods. And if you talk about the transportation of the goods, obviously if you're transporting the goods, there should be a proper document with you. If you are liable for an e-way bill, you should have that e-way bill. Others, you should have an invoice or something. And you should know that this good, whatever you're supplying, is right. It should not be, which is illegal. So you cannot supply some illegal goods, and you cannot destroy the goods. It should not be like you have just removed the tag or something, or you have just tried to make the changes in some goods, which was not even like liable to be transferred or maybe transported. In that case, this is again confiscation. So if you look into the cases, the first one is transport goods without proper documents. Second is if you supplies or transport the goods which will be confiscated. And the third one is you destroy or tampers the seized good. What does this mean? So what happens? Sometimes the government or the authority, they knows. So while you are traveling, you are transporting that goods, the government knows or the authorities know that this goods, whatever you're supplying, is not right. There is something wrong. There is something fishy over there. So they can also seize your goods. And if they seize the goods, what you are going to do, you may, if you're removing some labeling or something, you know that you are actually avoiding some taxes, you are making some fraud, and just because of this, you're just destroying that good or you're tampering the seized good, then again that's an offense. So this was the offense under our fourth category, which was related to the supply or transport, transport. Now we'll go towards the last category, which is others, which was not covered in these four categories. So if you suppress your turnover to evade tax, just think of an example. Actual turnover for you was 5 crore, but instead of 5 crore, you're just showing 4 crore turnover, just to not make the payment of the taxes to the government, or maybe in that particular year, you may be thinking, okay, maybe I can give in the next month, but I don't just adjust it. I'm not showing in this month, I'm going to show in the next month. So it means just trying to change your turnover. So if you're suppressing or you're changing your turnover, but your actual turnover was not that amount, in that case, again, it's an offense. Then if you are not registered under GST, but you are liable to register, then again, this is an offense. Or if you obstruct the GST officer during duty, so if the GST officer is actually conducting his duty and you're creating issues for him, then again, that's an offense. Or if in case you destroy the evidence. So usually what happens, let's say there is a raid in your company, and since you have a raid, you know that there were certain fraudulent, you are raising some invoices which was not right, and you're just destroying that evidence so that government cannot or the authority cannot catch you. In that case also this is an offense, so you cannot destroy the evidence. So this was our 5 category where we have actually understood about the 21 offenses which are done by this registered person and which will be liable for the penalty or maybe confiscation or maybe the you can say the other thing. Now we'll also understand there are more 5 more offenses which if done by the third party who is indirectly involved in an offense will also be liable for such penalty, confiscation, or maybe the goods can be seized for him. Now if we just talk about what are the 5 offenses. So if that person aids or abets any of the 21 offenses, so we have actually studied these 21 offenses. So if this person is also making that offenses, then that is. The second is in any way deals with goods he knows are liable for confiscation. Just think, there is a transporter, and that transporter, he don't have that goods. He is taking the goods of some other person. So he took some goods of that person and then supplying that thing. So here this transporter is nothing but he's a third person here. So if this person is a third person, but he knows that these goods are not right or it's illegal, but still he's transferring that goods, or he know that there was a requirement of an e-way bill on this thing, but he's still not taking that document with him. In that particular case, what will happen? This will also be considered as an offense. The third is in any way deals with the services he knows are in contravention of the law. We know okay, goods can be confiscated, services cannot be confiscated. So in case of services, if it's in contravention of the law, then also this is an offense. The other one is he is faced to appear before an officer when issued a summons. And the last one is fails to issue invoice or accounts invoice as per the law. So if these are the cases, then that is the offenses which has been done by the third party who is indirectly involved in an offense. So right now we have understood about this 21 offenses which has been done by the registered person or the 5 offenses which has been done by this third person who is indirectly involved in that particular offense. Now we'll move toward the punishment. Okay, now I've done this offenses, what next? Will I be actually punished? So that is the question over here. So yes, there is a punishment over here, and the punishment can be in the form of penalty. There it could be in the form of prosecution, and it could also be in the form of confiscation. If we talk about penalty, then this is for all the offenses which we have studied till now, that 21 offenses and the 5 offenses for the third person. So there is a levy of penalty. If we talk about prosecution, when I'm talking about prosecution means I'm going into the jail. Whether this jail should be for everything? So no. So here what they have done from this 21 offenses which we had, they have taken out some 8 offenses, and again if we talk about there were third person offenses, so they have taken 3 offenses from them and made the list of 11 offenses. So in this 11 offenses plus if your limit exceeds some threshold, in that particular case you are liable for the prosecution, which is jail. The third type of an punishment is confiscation, which means if the goods are supplied in contravention of law, then they can be confiscated. So let's say you are supplying some illegal law, or you are supplying some you can say the goods without the e-way bill, so that again goods can be confiscated. So now we'll understand about the penalties first, then we'll move towards the confiscation, which is jail, and then the third punishment, which is confiscation of the goods, we'll move towards that. So first we'll understand about the penalties, which is applicable in all the offenses which we have studied till now, and then we'll go to the other points. So there are certain sections which has been defined related to the penalty. But we'll just move towards the what is the actual penalty which the person has to pay. So if we just talk about the penalty, there are certain fraud related and there are certain cases which is non-fraud related, and there's also a third person who is involved. So the penalty can be for these 3 kind of a person. So if it's related to fraud, so if we just talk about related to the fraud, then the penalty is higher of 10,000 or 100% of the tax amount. So if it is related to fraud, then is this the higher of. So make sure you are saying higher of. So at least 10,000 you have to anyhow pay. It could be more If the tax amount is more, so 100% of the tax amount of the 10,000, that is the penalty if you're making the fraud. But let's say there was not a genuine mistake, you have just made a mistake, then obviously the penalty will also be less. So in that particular case, the penalty is 10,000 or 10% of the tax amount. So where you don't have an intention to make some fraud, but you have just made a mistake, in that case, this is the penalty. And if we talk about the third person, in third person, the maximum penalty which he is liable to pay is 25,000. So that is the penalty in case of the third person. But there is some relaxation which has been given. So if your tax amount is less than 5,000, which is known as minor breach, so you can, and you know that this can be easily rectifiable and clearly without any motive of the fraud, then in that case you don't have to pay any penalty. So that is in case your tax amount is less than 5,000. So this is about the penalty. So we have actually understood till now in respect of the penalties. So we have understood what was the offenses made by the third party. We have understood about the penalties. Penalties again we have understood in three parts. It's related to fraud, other than fraud, or maybe by third person. So now we'll just move towards prosecution, which is the second type of the punishment which will be given to the person. If we talk about prosecution, is nothing is but a conducting of the legal proceeding against someone in respect of the criminal charge. It's just going to jail. So that person can, or the authority can put you to the jail if you're doing this. So here, if you are doing this 11 type of the offenses, plus any person who attempts, helps to commit such offenses will also go to the jail. If you are, and obviously if it's also above the threshold limit, so that is also important. So if you are doing this 11 offenses, plus it's more than the threshold limit, in that particular case, you can go to jail. So if we just talk about what are that 11 offenses, earlier we have understood this 21 offenses. So this has been taken out from the same offenses. If we combine this 21 offenses plus this 5 offenses which was done by the third party, we have taken some from this, combined it over here and made that 11 offenses. So if we just look into this, earlier we have categorized that into 5 parts. So one part was related to invoice. So if you are supplying without the invoice or with the intention to evade the tax, or you are issuing the invoice without supply leading to wrong ITC availment or ITC utilization or refund of tax, or you are actually availing the ITC using the invoice raised without the supply. So this is the 3 which is related to the invoice. If you are doing this, in that particular case, what will happen? You have to you will have to go to the jail, provided this is above the threshold limit. We'll understand what is the threshold limit, but this is related to the invoice. So if we just go through it, the first one which was already there, if you are supplying the good without you are not even giving the invoice, or you're giving the false invoice because you want to make some fraud or something, or maybe you are giving an invoice without the supply, which means you're not giving the goods or the services to that person so that other person can actually take the ITC, right? In that particular case, or the other person can actually take the refund of that amount, which means you're doing fraud with the government and later you're not going to deposit the tax to the government. So in that case, that is the offenses which is covered, which is actually eligible for this prosecution. Okay. The third one is you are actually availing the ITC using the invoice raised without supply. Means you have not received the goods and services, but still you are actually claiming the ITC. That is also another offense. The second category which we have discussed earlier was information. So in respect of this two information, these two are the things which are actually covered under the list where you can go to the jail provided your limit exceed the threshold limit. So that are the two is, first one is you issue the fake financial record or false information with the intention to evade the payment, or you does not provide or provides the false information required under any law. The third one was related to tax amount. Again, tax amount, if you remember, we had discussed two important things. One was the other category, and the one was directly tax. If you collect some amount and you don't pay within the 3 months, or you collect extra amount but you don't pay within the 3 months, or maybe you have erroneously claimed the refund and all. So that was the 4 category we have discussed. So from that, one is over here. So if you collect the GST and you don't pay to the government within 3 months, then you will be liable for the prosecution again if it exceeds the threshold limit. And the other one is if you evade tax or you fraudulently avails the ITC or you fraudulently avails the refund, then also it's covered over here. Then there was another one which is talking about if transportation one, the other category which we had, the fourth category which we have. So here they say in any way deals with goods, you know is liable for the confiscation, or you deals with the services, you know it's in the contravention of the law. In that particular case, this is again covered in that particular list. Then the fifth category we had others. From that others we have taken two for this prosecution thing. So that two are, one is obstruct the GST officer during the duty, or you destroy the evidence. So these are the total 11 offenses on which you would be liable for this prosecution, provided the fraud you are making is above that threshold limit. Now we know what is that threshold limit over here. So here, if the amount of the tax evaded, ITC wrongly utilized, or the refund wrongly taken exceed 500 lakh. So if that amount exceed 500 lakh, then you will go to jail for 5 years. Plus you also have to pay some fine, and that will be cognizable and non-bailable. Then if it exceeds 200 lakh, then you have to go to the jail for 3 years plus some fine. And again, it's non-cognizable but it's bailable. And if it exceeds 100 lakh, in that case, you have to go to the jail for 1 year plus there will be some fine. But this is non-cognizable and it's bailable. We'll understand what this cognizable means and what is bailable offense means. So if the police officer has an authority to arrest without a warrant and start investigation even without the permission from the court. So if the police commissioner member can just come to your home or maybe office or the business place and they say, oh, I want to arrest you without any warrant, that becomes a cognizable offense. But if the person can be released from the prison with some few conditions attached. So here, if you remember, we have understood if you are making a fraud of above 500 lakh, then it's in that case it's the cognizable means the authority can come to your home and can just directly arrest you without any warrant. But if you are making a fraud which just exceeds 200 lakh but not more than 500 lakh, in that case are non-cognizable, which means they have to come with a warrant. Without warrant, they cannot arrest you. Same happens with 100 lakhs also. Now, if we talk about bailable thing, if we understand what this bailable means, you have also understood this, especially in the movies and all, where they use, okay, isko to bail mil gayi, isko bail nahi mili. So, iska matlab the person can be released from a prison with few conditions attached if the court sanctions the bail application. So, they have to actually submit, give some money, some fine and all, and on some conditions, government or the court can actually give him a bail. So, if we look into again back into what was the prosecution. So if you are done or the fraud which you have done is more than 500 lakh, in that case non-bailable. You cannot even get the relief from the court. But if it's up to or exceed 200 lakh but within 500 lakh, then it's a bailable, and same applies for 100 lakh provision. So this was about the prosecution, but obviously if you just look into, there are certain, so here this is the punishment. If we just talk about the amount is involved is, when we're looking into the amount, we're looking into tax evaded or ITC wrongly availed or utilized, or refund is wrongly taken. But there could be cases where this is not even applicable. Then how I'm going to even take out the amount? So here there are these cases which is from that 11 cases which we have understood. So if you are destroying the evidence or you are obstructing the GST officer or you're making the false information, because here I don't know the amount over here, so you have to go to the jail up to 6 months, and plus you have to give the fine to the government. So this was second type of a punishment which we have understood. The first was penalty. Now the second was confiscation, which means I'm going to the jail. And now we'll go towards the third one, which is confiscation of the goods. So if we talk about the confiscation of goods, obviously it will only be applicable for goods and it will not be applicable for the services. And if the goods are supplied in contravention of the law, then this will be applicable. So these are the 5 cases where this confiscation of goods will be applicable. And one important thing which is applicable over here, that you did not pay the amount liable on detention and seizure. So your good will be your goods will be confiscated only if it's like 5 conditions plus you do not pay the amount liable on detention and seizure, which means good will be confiscated only after this detention or seizure happen. So this will be applicable in the third part. So these are the 5 cases where the goods can be confiscated. Now, which means when we are talking about base, first one detention, then seizure, and then confiscation. So when the goods are suspected and when they know that the goods are, when the authorities suspect that the goods are liable for the confiscation, in that particular case they can detain your goods. What that means? That means they will not have any access to your goods. They will not have a title to the goods, but they have just kept that good. So maybe they have done the sealing. So you have seen in cases what happens, the authority goes to the maybe warehouse or something and they just seal that goods. So they are not taking that goods with them, they are not taking the title of that goods, but at the same time they're not allowing to sell that goods by that particular supplier or don't make any changes. In that particular case, that we have to say as a detention. Second is seizure, where means that goods are also taken by that person, so they just take that good also with them, but the title is still with that owner. In that case, it's a seizure. So this happens only after the inquiry and the investigation. And third is the confiscation, which means the title is also now with the government. So first detention seizure will be applicable. They will ask for some penalty, they will ask for some fees and all. If the SSC actually gives this, then it's okay. Then it will not be even liable for the confiscation. But if the SSC don't give that, then in that case this will be liable for the confiscation. So here, when we talk about detention and the seizure, when this will happen, there is a person who transport the goods, and that goods and that conveyance will be detained or seized. Or let's say they are storing that in transit somewhere, so the person storing the goods in transit, that can be seized, or the person who transport the goods can also be seized. Now question comes in, because we told the confiscation will only happen when the detention and the seizure happen, right? But if the person has already paid some fees over here, then this confiscation will not happen. So we'll now understand how this release will happen, how this late fees and everything can be happen. So here it says detained or seized goods will be released on payment of applicable tax or the penalty. So this is if the owner he himself comes forward and whatever they have seized was a taxable supply, then he has to pay the penalty of 100% of the tax amount. And if it's an exempt supply, then he has to pay the penalty of lower of 2% of the value of goods or 25,000. But in case the owner does not come himself, वो खुद से नहीं आता, तब क्या होगा? तो उस केस में if it's a taxable supplier, then he has to pay the penalty of 50% of the value of goods minus if he has already paid some taxes. And if it's an exempt supplier, then the penalty will be 5% of the value of goods or 25,000. So whatever is the lower, that will become your penalty which you have to pay to release the goods whichever has been detained. So if you are going in a transit and there was certain goods which has been seized, the reason could be, let's say the e-way was not there, proper document was not there, the good got seized. So in that case, you have to pay this penalty. After you pay the penalty, your goods will be released. If your goods is released, then there is no question of confiscation. But in case you don't pay this penalty, then you will be liable for the confiscation, which means your goods will be taken by the department only. We'll understand this for the example here. Here, when the owner comes forward, let's say the value of the goods was 1 lakh and GST was 18%, which means the tax amount was 18,000. So here penalty will be 100%, which is if you just look into 18,000. If the owner does not come, so this is value of the goods, then the tax amount 18,000. And if we talk about the penalty, that was 5% of the sorry. So if we just talk about the penalty in case of a taxable supply, that is 50% of the value of goods. So here 50% of the value of goods, which means 1 lakh was the value of goods, then 50% of that becomes 50,000. So the total payment he has to make is penalty plus your tax amount, which is 68,000. So that is how he has to pay the penalty along with the tax to get his goods back. But it doesn't mean, like, let's say there was a goods which is going in the road and without even informing, without even giving the chance to the person, that person, the authority cannot detain that goods, right? So here they say before serving the order, he cannot detain. So he has to first serve the order and has to give the opportunity of being heard. Then only this person can actually, the tax authority can detain the goods, whatever they are going to do. Now, after detaining the goods within the 7 days, this payment needs to be made. So this person, the person whose goods has been detained, he has to make the payment of all the liability to get the goods discharged. And if he don't pay, then he will be liable for the confiscation. Right. So this is about the confiscation part, and the proper officer, he will check that the confiscated good not required for any proceeding. Then within the 3 months, the person is given 3 months to pay the fine. If paid, then he will go to return the good. If does not pay, then he will actually dispose of the good and sell the good. So what happened? Goods was retained, opportunity was given. Person, if the person actually makes the payment or either solves it, if he makes the payment within the 7 days, he can take his goods back and can just go ahead. But in case this person was not able to make the payment within the 7 month, government will become the owner of the good. Now he will give 3 months opportunity to that person, and within the 3 months, if he has paid, then goods will be returned to him. But if he has not paid, then government will go ahead and dispose of and sell that to the government. So you would have understood there is like a lot of bids which usually happen by the government. So what happens, like the government actually confiscate, the authority actually confiscate the goods, but where they know okay, this is not a, like this is the case, but wherever the users think okay, anyhow the value of this good was not so much, I will not be able to even sell at a higher price. So that person says okay, you keep that amount, you keep that goods with you. I'm not going to actually realize the higher amount from the person, the customer. So they don't even take that good. But where they feel no, the value of that goods was really high and I can sell at a higher price, then that person will actually go ahead and take that goods. So this is all about the offenses, penalties, confiscation, detention, and all this thing, and also the prosecution. So in today's session, if we just summarize in a bit, we understood about the interest, where we talked about main two section, which was section number 50 subsection 1 and 50 subsection 3, where we talked about interest at the rate of 18% and 24%. We talked about penalty, and we talked about the late fees. And under late fees, if we talked about if it's a no tax liability, then the late fees would be 20 rupees per day, maximum 10,000. And if there is a you can say there is a tax liability, then the late fees was your 50 rupees per day, and the maximum again 10,000. We also discussed about the offenses which has been done. So there was 21 offenses and there was 5 offenses which has been done by the third party. Again, when we're talking about the offenses, we said all the offenses, these 21 offenses, will be liable for this penalty. So they have to pay the penalty. And when the penalty was done because of the fraud, then we said it will be 10,000 or 100% of the tax evaded, whichever is higher. If it was other than fraud, then it was 10% of the tax amount or 10,000, whichever is higher. Then we also talked about third party. Wherever third party was involved, the maximum penalty for him would be 25,000. Then we talked about the second punishment which can be given, where we talked about prosecution, which means he can go to the jail. And for that jail, we have understood there was 11 offenses which was covered over there. And in that 11 offenses, plus there was a threshold limit given. If that exceed that particular threshold limit, then he has to go to the jail. There was different years, like if the value was more than 500 lakh, 551121, that is how that was defined. Like more than 500 lakh, 5 years. More than 200 lakhs, it was like 3 years. And then there was a more than, you can say more than 100 lakh, that was 1 year. So that is how that was defined, and some was cognizable, some was not, some was bailable, some was not. So that is, we have understood about the you can say the prosecution thing. And then third category was confiscation of the goods. So if you are dealing with some that 6 offenses, in that case your goods can also be confiscated, but confiscation will happen only after detention and the seizure. If you are able to release your good at that time, then this confiscation will not even happen. So this is all we have discussed in today's session. Hope you like the video. In case you have any query, you can always drop us a mail. And if you have missed any of the part in this video, you can always subscribe to our ClearText YouTube channel, where you will get the updates related to GST always. And also this video will be uploaded over here, where you can see this video. Thank you very much.